Hey guys, Teresa Topaz here. I'm very excited to do this video for you, and it's all about how to set up a Gibson Les Paul. Now, as a lot of you who know me know this guitar very well, this is Rose. This is my main guitar, and I'm going to show you how to do a setup. Now, there's some unique features about this guitar, but I will go over point by point how I do a setup on this guitar, and I do it pretty often, which you should too. And that's one thing that I do want to make mention of. A lot of people wonder what a setup is and how often should you do it. Well, minimum twice a year, and that's if you're kind of just starting out and you're not playing a lot every single day. But the parts on a guitar are kind of like an engine. They need to move, they need to be oiled, they need to function. The guitar needs to be played to be healthy. When a guitar sits, it's the exact same as a car. Things start to break down, things start to fuse, rust. We don't want that, especially on a nice guitar. And setups are needed on every single guitar. It doesn't matter if it's a $100 Squire that you're just starting out with or if it's a $10,000 custom shop. Every guitar behaves a little differently, and so every setup is very unique to you as the player because everyone has different tailored tastes when it comes to action heights. So let me just go over some key point factors, and let's start with the tools that you're going to need. Now, if you're watching this video to learn how to do setups yourself, great. You're going to need some tools in order to be able to perform the setup. Or if you're just wondering what a setup is and what's done when you take it to your local luthier or repair shop, then this video is going to help you quite a bit. And please don't forget, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I will always get to every single question, and I will answer it as best as I can for you. I'm here to help, and support goes a long way. So let's start with what you're going to need. First off, I've already restrung Rose with strings. These strings are the ones that I use for this particular guitar. These are Ernie Ball Cobalts, gauge 9. And there are a couple of things that I cannot live without, and the other one is my Ernie Ball peg winder. When you work on as many guitars as I do on a daily basis, this is one of your best friends. One thing also that you're going to need is some type of guitar polish, and also a type of hydration for the fretboard itself. Now, I'm using Dunlop, the 65 lemon oil. I'm generally not very fond of lemon oil, but this one I really like. It's got an applicator right on the top, so it kind of kills two birds with one stone. But this lemon oil does not leave any residue whatsoever. Sometimes if there's a little bit too much acidity in it, it can leave these like white spots in the grains of the rosewood neck. So this does not do that. So I'm very fond of this. I've been using this for like the last year straight, and I love it. So a couple other things you're going to need. This is my trusty little toolkit from StewMac. Now, I am also a certified guitar tech, so for me this is essential. And here are different screw bits. Here are all Phillips. These are truss rod adjustments and all particular little tiny tools that you're going to need, especially if you work on guitars quite a bit. So one other thing, and this I would recommend for even hobbyist people who are just starting out with guitar, if you're going to master your instrument, master it. So this little guy you can get at StewMac as well. You can also get on Amazon. This is an action height ruler. So each guitar has sweet spots that it lives in, for everywhere from 0.25 all the way up to 3.5. So next thing you're going to need is wire cutters for your strings. And then I use Tri-Flow. This is to oil the hardware, your tuners. This you can get from StewMac. There's a couple different companies on the market, but this is what keeps everything kind of moving. This is Big Ben's nut sauce. Now this stuff is great for the nut itself. Now on my guitar I have a brass nut, so I don't personally need this, but every other guitar that has a bone, micarta, Graphtec Tusk, or composite bone will need this kind of application. So next thing is 10mm. This is to tighten your tuners. This is the exact size that you'll need for the majority of electric and acoustic guitars. And yeah, so you also need a tuner of some sort. Now, really to be dead accurate, you should be using a strobe tuner. You can get pretty close with a general tuner. Right now I have the Polytune, TC Polytune tuner. This guy's actually pretty dead accurate. I've even tested this up against my strobe tuner and my Kemper, and this thing rocks. And then you'll need a cable. I'm using Mogami. This is the gold series. I've been using these forever, and I only use those in my studio. So, and then worst case scenario, if you need it, needle nose pliers. All right, let's get to it. Okay, so I've already done half the work with taking the strings off and getting new strings on. So the biggest thing is you can do this one of two ways, and I wanted to show you this just in case you're in between setups and you're doing a restring. So when we hydrate the fretboard, I'm using Dunlop 65. So if you're about to do a setup, you'll have all the strings off. Now you can just easily go up and down the fretboard itself like this and be able to coat the fretboard. The most important thing that I can tell you when it comes to restrings, do not, and I repeat, do not take all the strings off unless you're about to make a truss rod adjustment, because what happens is as soon as the neck is flat and you take all the strings off, you lost the tension. So this can work. This is how you hydrate your fretboard while you're restringing your guitar, and when you restring it, you're doing one string at a time. So if you can see, I'm going to move the strings over like this. Let's say I already have the low E string off of the fretboard itself. And so I'm just going to move up and down each fret and hydrate the bass side. Just like that. And then you'll take a soft cloth or paper towel and just kind of rub it in up and down the fretboard itself, so you're able to get that whole bass side of the neck. All right, go ahead and wipe it off. And so what you'll do is you'll repeat all the way through. Once you get the low E string strung to pitch, then you'll move over to the A string and then do the same application there. Obviously this is going to be much easier if you're about to do a setup, because then you can just attack the whole fretboard. But I wanted to show you how to do this even while you're doing a restring, because it's very important to hydrate your fretboard. What can happen is if the fretboard gets dry, this is still a plank of wood. These frets are very gently laid into the wood itself, and they'll start to come up and they'll start to fray at the ends. If you've seen a couple frets on the edges starting to go like this, you know the fretboard is insanely dehydrated. So we want to avoid that from happening, especially on a set neck guitar, because doing a neck set on a set neck is a nightmare. Literally have to take the entire instrument apart. So anyways, we want to avoid that. So make sure that the fretboard is hydrated. Next thing we're going to do, I'm going to position you guys back. All right, so we've adjusted the neck, and I'll show you how to check for action. Basically, what you do when you're checking for action, this is your ruler. So you want to capo at the first fret and measure at the 12th, okay? Kind of hard to see, but right now my action's at about 1 millimeter. So you capo down on the first fret with your finger or with a capo, and so this will tell you accurate action height. So if you can see how low that is. Now, if you want it higher, you can go up into the realm of like 1.5, 1.6. I really would not advise going any higher than 1.7 because guitars are math. So the farther that string has to travel to hit the fretboard, now you're risking intonation issues. Intonation is when the guitar is in tune with itself. I probably should do a video specifically on truss rod adjustments because there's a lot to them, but this is just a basic overview on how to do a setup. So anyway, so now that we've got the neck perfectly straight, we've kind of adjusted where we want our action set, and you check it on the lower, meaning the bass side, and then your treble side. All right, so let's say if the action's, we know the neck is flat, but the action's way too low. How we adjust that, the next step in a setup, is coming down to what's called the tune-o-matic bridge. Now this bridge system is a two-part series. There's the bridge itself with the saddles holding each individual string, and then there's what's called the soap bar. So now as we see, these saddles are all in different kind of zigzag patterns because each string is a different gauge. So first step, action height. So the neck is flat, but we know that this is too low. This needs to be adjusted. And so how we do that is we take our trusty little Gibson tool, we find the accurate sized Allen wrench in order to adjust the tune-o-matic itself. So I found my size. Now see, if I go righty-tighty, I go down. Lefty-loosey makes it go higher. This is how we raise and lower. Now, not every style Gibson will have the access on the top. This is a traditional. Some studios and standards literally are just by the wheel itself. The trick for adjusting those is you do unfortunately have to down tune the guitar to loosen the tension to raise and lower these. So that can be a multiple step, but once you get the hang of it and you kind of figure out where you like your action, you know where to set it. The next biggest thing is the saddles. This is the next step in a setup itself. So generally for Gibsons, we're using a small flathead. This is where that StewMac little trusty tool comes in wonderfully. So if we're tuning, I'm going to plug the guitar in using a Mangami cable, and I'm going to show you. All right, so I've got my tuner on, and I'm going to get it right in tune. All right, so I'm in tune. How do you check for intonation? There we go. New strings. How do you check for intonation? Well, I know I'm in tune with the open string tuned to E. I'm going to hold the string down on the 12th fret and make sure you're not bending the string up or down, and make sure you're not pressing too hard, right? So these are gauge 9 strings that I have on here. So now when I hit the tuner, I am perfectly in tune. Now I'm going to exaggerate this to show you what to do in case it's out of tune. So I'm going to push down really hard. So if you see the tuner is registering several cents sharp. So if it's sharp, the saddle itself has to come back. If the note is flat, the saddle needs to move forward. How do we make that adjustment? So we're going to come to the back of the saddle here. There are these teeny tiny little screws. It's a little hard to see. Now, studios and standards will be a flathead, right? Mine is a traditional, which is not a flathead. Got to get your trusty little Gibson tool and find, again, the correct Allen wrench size. And to be able to engage it in the saddle itself. So if I'm registering sharp, I'm going to tighten the saddle and make sure that saddle comes back. If I'm registering flat, I'm going to do the exact opposite, and I'm going to turn it to the left to have that saddle go forward. Now, if you can see, they're all staggered. They have to be, because E is the thickest string, right? So you can see right here, they're kind of similar, but yet it's staggered because they're all a different gauge. G and E will always sit the farthest back, and then you'll see them do this, kind of zigzagged. And sometimes, you know, guitars breathe, so sometimes if you're not getting into correct intonation, you might have to flip this. So that's the beauty about Tune-o-matics. These guys come right off. So those are some key points when it comes to doing setups on a Gibson Les Paul. One thing I will tell you, don't forget to put the truss rod cover back on. And then once you've made the adjustments to the neck, let it sit for a couple of hours on a rosewood or an ebony neck, on a rosewood or ebony neck. Give it a couple hours, come back, check it, sight the neck again, make sure it's flat. If it's flat, it's good to go. Put your truss rod cover back on, and then you're set. For other guitars that are maple necks, maple is tough, and sometimes maple can continue to shift for up to 72 hours. So I would let it sit for a few hours, even up to 24 hours if you had to make more than a quarter turn. Double check it. Okay, so that's how you do a setup on a Gibson Les Paul. The only other thing that's a little different that I did not go over on this particular guitar, because I do have a brass nut, is lubing the nut. There's a lot of those kind of terms in music. Basically, one thing that you're going to want to do if you're getting string breakage, or if you're getting any, wearing of the strings up in that area of the instrument, this is going to be your friend, Big Ben's. Basically, what I do is get a little bit in the low E string slot, and then these little guys, this is one of my little tech tips, floss, get it into the low E, and then kind of move it over so you can get an appropriate amount of Big Ben sauce in the actual nut itself. It's very important to do that. Overall, the strings can actually wear down the valleys in the nut and causing rough spots. All right, guys, so that's how you do a setup on a Les Paul. Let me know if you have any questions about anything I've covered today. I'm happy to go over more in detail on anything that you may have a question on. But just remember, stay up to date on your string health. Change your strings every 30 days if you're using a nickel wound. Or if you're playing more, it might be every week. And then definitely stay up to date on setups, and strive every day to learn a little bit more about your instrument, because the more you know, the more you're mastering it. All right, guys, have a rockin' day. See you later. Bye.